The topic today is going to be back to basics, AI for starters. I'll go ahead and introduce our speakers today. We have Dr. Christopher Jones and Dr. Raymond Antypas. Dr. Jones obtained his Bachelor of Science degree in biology from NIU in 2003, his Doctor of Pharmacy from Midwestern University in 2009, and his Master of Health Administration from Ohio University in 2023. Dr. Jones is currently the Director of Pharmacy Operations at Advocate Sherman Hospital in Elgin, Illinois. Dr. Raymond Antypas obtained his Bachelor of Science in Pharmaceutical Sciences in 2018 and his Doctor of Pharmacy degree in 2020 from the University of Toledo. He received his Master's of Public Health from the University of Pittsburgh in 2021 and completed a PGY 1 and 2 Health System Pharmacy Administration and Leadership Residency in 2022 at Allegheny General Hospital in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Dr. Antypas is currently the Pharmacy Operations Manager at Advocate Christ Medical Center, Advocate Children's Hospital in Oak Lawn, Illinois. Let's welcome both of our speakers today.
Thank you so much for the introduction, Melissa, and thank you for everyone for taking the time to be with us today for this CE Appetizer Back to Basics AI for Starters. Once again, my name is Christopher Jones, and I'm the Director of Pharmacy Operations at Advocate Sherman.
And once again, my name is Raymond Antypas, and I am a Manager of Pharmacy Operations at Advocate Christ Medical Center and Advocate Children's Hospital, Oak Lawn. To get us started today, we have no financial disclosures to share at this time. Our learning objectives for this CE Appetizer are as follows. First, we'll start with really defining what artificial intelligence is and how it has increased in recent times. It's become a very big buzzword. We've heard a lot about it in the news, in healthcare, and so on. So we'll dive a little bit into that. Then we'll move into reviewing what current AI applications exist. We've heard about ChatGPT, Google Gemini. We see the commercials all the time in front of us, but then we'll take it a step further and identify how these applications that we're discussing can be utilized on a daily basis and for their intended purposes. But before we really get into all of that, we'll start with our first polling question, and please feel free to post this in the Zoom chat. What comes to mind when you hear the words large language models, artificial intelligence, and machine learning? Noting that to some degree they're related, but they can also be independent of each other. So please feel free to leverage the chat and we'll respond or read out some of the responses that we see. We'll read a few of them off. Michael said he's got a hard time differentiating these terms, but considers himself a seasoned computer person. Honestly, you're not alone. I think that is a pretty general feeling and sentiment across the board. Elisa describes them as helpful tools, which they most certainly are, and we're looking to really delve into how helpful they can be as well. We also hear individuals say that they're confusing and unfamiliar and not sure how to appropriately leverage them. So again, kind of hoping to address some of those concerns. Russell, you're definitely right. They are so vast. They can mean so many different things, but we can have a variation, robotic responses, certainly, information at our hands in seconds. Where do we get that information, though? That's also something that we will be able to touch upon in today's session. And then there's also a New York Times article from this morning talking about reducing the number of entry-level white-collar jobs. Now, we won't get too much into the job element of it in terms of replacement, but rather using it as a tool. So to get us started, we'll discuss what machine learning is. So machine learning at its core is also considered a field within artificial intelligence. So we can kind of think of artificial intelligence as sometimes a umbrella or blanket statement to describe things, but machine learning is one of those components that fits under it. And so machine learning really allows for decisions to be made without prior programming. But what it really relies upon is the existence of data. Without data, there's nothing for the machines to really learn. And so what happens is computers get these algorithms built into them. And I think it's really important to note that what they're getting built into them is built in by humans. We need humans on the back end. We still need humans to do the work of building up these algorithms that then go and identify patterns. And we'll talk about some of those pattern identification tools later in this presentation. But after they've had these algorithms built in and they start to learn these patterns, they then start making predictions when they have new data. So there is a reliance upon old data to create new data, but at the end of the day, there still needs to be that data developed and created, but also input and collaborated upon with the algorithms that we have developed for the machine learning. So then taking it a step further from the machine learning, we then talk about what artificial intelligence is. And so at its core, artificial intelligence looks to be building upon the creation of machines and software that have human-like behavior. Now, we know that humans are very complex individuals. And for those of us on today's session who are people leaders, we know that humans can be complex individuals with a range of emotions and understanding. So to kind of drill down on that a little bit, we look at what psychologists will associate with human intelligence as a combination of abilities. And AI research has focused on some of these abilities, such as reasoning, problem solving, perception. It's important to note that when we communicate something to each other, that perception matters. How I communicate with you in a face-to-face interaction is perceived differently than how I may communicate with you via an email or a text message. And so it's how do we take those and then implement that into computers? So in our continuation of defining what artificial intelligence is, one thing that is important to know is AI has not reached a level of human intelligence. Humans can take information from one source and use it in a variety of different ways. However, artificial intelligence is not there. In its current state, it focuses on both predication and execution based upon predictions, based upon those algorithms that humans are inputting into the computers, into the processors, working behind the scenes. When examining machine learning systems, for the most part, they can do one task really well. Now, depending on how they're built out, determines what those tasks are. It has no common sense. It's not autonomous and it doesn't operate alone. We hear about it all the time. Is this the creation of a new, Skynet that we saw in movies of past, right? It's not there to have that human-based intelligence. And it is not without flaw and can possess a false sense of confidence that Christopher will talk about in future slides as well. Now, before we dig further, I think we need to take a look at the past. And so we have a timeline here of where we started to first hear about the words artificial intelligence. In the 1930s, the earliest forms of artificial intelligence came about with the logician Alan Turing. And he kind of laid the groundwork for artificial intelligence, or what he thought one day would become artificial intelligence. So that initial concept was for the machines to exhibit intelligent behavior comparable to humans. But as we talked about a couple slides ago, that intelligent behavior comes with additional facets, that perception, that problem solving, that reasoning that happens. Computers aren't really there yet. 20 years later, AI programs were developed to play checkers against human competitors. And that comes in with the algorithms and building out predictions based off those computer models. Again, humans had to be involved in that process. About a few decades later, you then had IBM developing Deep Blue, which defeated a world champion chess player. Shows you from the 1950s to about the turn of the century, we had such a strong development that, for those of you that have played either checkers or chess, has a large variation in how it's played. Deep Blue, however, developed its chess acumen, for lack of a better term, through a large, robust computing process. It used 32 processors, which is on a large scale of processing speed, but it was able to evaluate about 200 million chess positions per second. But again, it had to be fed those predictions. It had to learn how to play chess with humans in the background, kind of facilitating all that. And then that brought us to about the 2010s when, for those of you who are Jeopardy fans like myself, we had IBM Watson competing on Jeopardy, winning first place against, the famous Ken Jennings. But again, how did IBM get Watson to succeed in Jeopardy? It fed it all of that information and taught it how to respond in a Jeopardy-like manner. So that brings us really to today's day and age, where in the past few years we've heard about AI and its increased usage. And this just offers a glimpse into how we're using AI in healthcare as a tool. And again, we continue to use it as its blanket term, but we have to be able to differentiate, knowing that it's not really its full intended purpose of, this is exhibiting human behavior. Rather, we're feeding it information, we're feeding it information about these medications and their previous uses, and then we're asking you to identify where can it be used in new drug expenditures. We're feeding it information to help us with diagnostic radiology or surgery or documentation burdens, right? But it's all about feeding it. It's that machine learning is where we're really building upon now in society so that one day we could get it to that artificial intelligence element where it is able to have perception and identify how it can approach case by case situations rather than just being fed a bunch of information and then kind of spitting it back out at us when we ask it a question or two. And so that brings us to our next polling question. Which of these is an example of artificial intelligence? And to select all that apply. We'll give it a few moments, and just a reminder, it is a select all that apply, so there could be more than one correct answer for you to choose from. So we have ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, Google Gemini, and Chat ICHP. All right, so it shows some familiarity with some ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot as well as Google Gemini. Unfortunately, Chat ICHP isn't available yet, but I think this might be the beginning of a new opportunity or new venture for us to delve into.
Before we jump into some of the tools that are available, I did really want to take a step back and talk a little bit about, I think that we are currently at an inflection point when it comes to artificial intelligence, very similarly to how when the internet was first coming about and was rising in prominence, where people started to utilize it more and more on a daily basis and utilize it for efficiency and pulling more information. I think we're really at that point when it comes to artificial intelligence, and it's really important for us as pharmacists, as technicians, as people within the healthcare field to understand what options we have available and really to start adding some of these tools to our toolkits. So we're going to go through the different options and see what may or may not work for you and how can you utilize this on your day-to-day. But I think it's also important to really have a general disclaimer for any of these applications prior to utilizing any of them is really making sure that you are checking with your site or system IT department before you start utilizing any of them, because obviously you don't want to violate any policies or procedures that your organization might have. And you really want to obviously keep security at the top of mind as you're going through utilizing any of these applications. The other piece is I'm not going to be logging into all of these specific AI applications. And I do have screenshots and we'll be walking through because I really didn't want to take the time from a presentation standpoint to be logging into all these specific applications and trying to do that in real time. So the first application, the one that probably has the most name recognition at this point in time, is ChatGPT. ChatGPT was released in late 2022 and really started to gain prominence in early 2023 in terms of a tool that was being utilized. It is run by OpenAI, and some of the nice pieces associated with ChatGPT, probably one of the nicest features is it's free. Also, there is a web-based and phone application that you can utilize. You can log in, start asking it questions. People have probably seen in the news of late that their visual generation or image generator has gotten much better, and you'll see news articles about that every so often. But one of the pieces that I think is really nice about it is its human-like text generation. So when you are utilizing ChatGPT, it does feel that like you were talking to a person at times, and the responses that it gives you are pretty good and pretty quick overall. But that also comes with a downside with how well it gives you those responses, which a lot of times it can be inaccurate. And it has the confidence of a self-assured teenager at times where it will sometimes double or triple down, even if you're telling it that it's giving you the incorrect response. And so that's something that it's really important that you realize that you're the person running this AI tool and that sometimes it's going to give you incorrect information. The other part is it's not really giving you, depending on the version that you're using, real-time information as well. And even in instances that I've utilized it, it's really difficult to understand where it's arriving at some of its responses that it's giving you and where its answers are coming from. This is not something I'm currently using on a day-to-day basis at work, but it is one of the options that I think people should be aware of and definitely have probably heard of. So I think most of the people who are on this call probably spend most of their day-to-day work outside of an EHR within a Microsoft ecosystem. So we'll be discussing Copilot and some of the applications within that, or that Copilot is able to work within Microsoft's ecosystem. So one of the pieces you should note as we're going through this, that your access and the functionality is going to be dependent on the settings that your organization may or may not have. The organization I work for, I do have full functionality with Copilot. So once again, just note that you might not have all of these pieces available. With any of the results, you really want to make sure that you're trusting but verifying any of the results. It's called Copilot for a reason. You are still the one who is driving the AI tool and the responses that you are getting, and how do you use those. It does have a web-based option and a mobile option as well, very similar to ChatGPT, but it is also working throughout the other applications. So if you do log into Copilot, this is the general overview that you will get in the general view. The version I have, it also has the option to go into my work. So I have the web-based and work where I can toggle back and forth. And based off of which option I choose, it's going to give me different prompts. And if I toggle over to work, I can actually search for files within all of the Microsoft applications I'm using at work, which has been a very nice feature to utilize. But I will say, when you first log into Copilot, it can be a little overwhelming, because how do you even get started with utilizing it, or what are you going to do with it? So you can see that there are 6 boxes that automatically appear, and these are what are called prompts. So there are prompts that are already in there for you that you can go ahead and use and edit and adjust as needed. You can go ahead as well and enter in information under the dialog box at the bottom. You can add files to adjust. And if you look at the bottom right section, you'll see that looks like a little star with 2 dots and a square. If you click into that, that's actually going to take you into the Copilot prompt gallery, which is another nice piece that they have, where there's more than just the 6 initial options that show up for you. And you can go in here and click in the prompts, edit them as to how you want. And this really kind of gets you started with different functions. You can also save them for later. So if there's a prompt that you really liked, like, hey, I might use this on a more frequent basis, you can save that, and then that will show up under your prompts. One of the examples that came up in the first section, and I think this is where it's really nice to use as well, is some of those features that you might not use within Microsoft all that often. For example, an out-of-office email, and how do you set up that in general. Copilot has a prompt, and this is really kind of its how-tos, which I've found very useful, and I've also used this for other team members. If they're asking, like, how do I do this? Well, the first step for me is really, well, if you ask Copilot, it's literally going to give you a step-by-step. So they have an option here for a funny out-of-office email response as one of their generated prompts, and it really walks you through step-by-step how do you even set up a out-of-office email. The other piece, just to note that it's there. I don't use it all that often, but there are what's called Copilot agents. And essentially, these are AI applications within an AI. And so you can see here some of the agents that I have listed as my favorites. I have a prompt coach and a visual creator. The visual creator creates certain images based off of the information I give it, but the prompt coach was something that I utilized quite a bit when I was first getting started utilizing Copilot, to make sure that the inputs in terms of what I was asking Copilot was helping me get the responses and the outputs that I really wanted. So we'll delve in a little bit deeper into some of the specific applications. So we'll start with Outlook. So one of the pieces that I use quite a bit is the summarize function within Outlook, which is very nice. And this is great, especially if you're coming back from PTO, where if you have 14 emails that you need to go through, it'll give you a quick snapshot of what was discussed during those emails that you missed. And as you take a look here, as well, I did use an example where I have an email from ICHP and it had to give me a brief summarization of what was sent out. And you can also give it feedback in terms of was this information correct or not correct with a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I would still say that you do have to read through your emails, but it does help prevent some of that too long didn't read for people when they do send you a very verbose email. You can hit that summarize and it gives you a very nice snapshot of what was discussed in that email. Another really nice piece that I like, and this is going to be located in different sections depending on what version of Outlook that you're utilizing, is the draft. And then there's also coaching functionality. So with that, you can actually put in an input and ask it to draft an email. So in this example, I asked Copilot to draft a polite email to Chris Crank asking what he foresees as the largest challenges to pharmacists in Illinois over the next 5 years. I also purposefully misspelled 4C's to see what Copilot would do. So after you put in your input, hit generate, and it's going to go ahead and give you a response. And this happens within seconds. You'll go ahead and get a response. And you can see that it went ahead and made what is a pretty polite email to Chris and even corrected my misspelling for me as well, which was a nice piece. And then underneath, it's asking, is there anything that you'd like to change about this email? So I can go ahead and give it a suggestion if I want to adjust it further. I can keep the email, discard it, I can regenerate, and it's going to take that prompt and give me another response that's going to be similar based off of my initial prompt, or I can adjust it. And that's where the coaching really comes in, and you can make it either longer, shorter, more formal, direct, casual, and you can also make it a poem if you want to. But this is a really nice feature for the coaching functionality, because sometimes you really want to make sure that your tone is matching your intent. And so that's something I think for anybody who's struggled or had challenges with wanting to make sure that it does line up, using that coaching functionality really has been helpful to make sure that you are aligning tone and intent. So of these options, of course, I had to make it a poem. So it did, within a matter of seconds, made it a poem for Chris Crank. I think this is a good way if you really want people to know that you utilize artificial intelligence to write an email. I think having a poem is one. So this is one that I discarded and have not sent to Chris Crank at this point in time, but who knows, you might get a poem in the future. Next up, we'll talk a little bit about Excel, and I will say Copilot within Excel is something that I have started to utilize more as of late. And I think this is a good level set for anybody who is not an Excel wizard, where it will actually help generate formulas for you, does some advanced analysis. It can do some conditional formatting for you. And I will say just last week, I had a lot of data that I wanted Copilot to make an Excel spreadsheet for me and a pie graph. And I literally just fed the data into Copilot, and it was able to make an Excel spreadsheet for me with everything that I was asking it to do. Once again, I trusted but verified all of the responses that it gave me, but it did save about a half an hour worth of time just from formatting and getting everything set up initially. So this is something I think, especially for people who are not as used to utilizing Excel, or if there's something that you're not doing on as frequent of a basis, it's nice to have that option and to ask or have Copilot help walk you through how to get the information and the data sets that you want. Next up is Microsoft Word and Copilot within Word. I like this quite a bit in terms of just kind of getting things going. For me on a personal basis, it's always kind of difficult starting with a blank slate. So I like the whittle down approach, and especially utilizing Copilot to at least get the base or the rough draft started for me has been very helpful, and then kind of whittling things down from there. So if you take a look, the example that I gave for today is I actually uploaded our PowerPoint presentation that we had for today, and I asked Copilot to create an outline for our presentation. And within a matter of seconds, it was able to take the PowerPoint and converted it over into a Word document that we had for use. And very similar to what we saw with Outlook, we have the options of keeping it, we can regenerate, get rid of it, or we can make adjustments. But it's nice that you're able to take one type of file within Microsoft and then adjust it to another sort of file. And being able to do that within Word, I've found to be very helpful. And I'm not sure how many people on the call are utilizing OneNote on a regular basis. I utilize OneNote quite a bit, especially when it comes to planning for meetings, also trying to plan my week. And so there are a number of prompts in here. And once again, keeping in mind that it's working across Microsoft's ecosystem, you can go ahead and pull information in from other applications within OneNote. So for example, for any of the residents who are on rotation with me, I actually have a shared OneNote with them, and I will pull in my calendar for the week. And then in our shared OneNote, I will highlight specifically what meetings they're going to be attending with me. So that's been something that has been a huge time saver for me. And you can see there's a number of other prompts that are in here that we don't have time to go through all of them, but it's been a very nice feature for those who utilize OneNote. And finally, for Microsoft Copilot, and where I think it truly shines is within Microsoft Teams. This is where all of the functionality, I think, really comes together. And for me, this is where I'm really living throughout my day-to-day work. Its search functionality is amazing, where it will actually be able to cross-check between all of your other applications and also through your chats. So if I'm ever looking for a file, I'm usually in Teams asking Copilot to find a specific file for me. And one of the strongest features, I would say, also from an efficiency and time standpoint, is how it takes minutes, meaning you can actually use Copilot to record meetings, and it will do a great transcription. There are obviously some accuracy issues at times, but the AI notes are amazing, where it will literally break down exactly what you talked about. And if you have follow-up items, it will give you those follow-up items as well. So basically, it's taking the transcript and then breaking it down even further. And if you are recording the meeting as well, it'll even break down specific points and where you were talking about things into chapters. So that piece has probably been the most time saving for me. And then those meeting minutes are readily available for your team right after the meetings ended. So I think that's one of the largest features and the most helpful when it comes to using Copilot, especially for Teams. And the last AI that I'm going to talk about is Google Gemini. And very honestly, this is something that I'm not using on a regular basis, but want to make sure that people knew that it's out there and it's available. But very similarly to Microsoft, it is something that does work across all of its other applications, but depending on the service that you have, you're going to have to pay a little bit more to get some of those pieces. But I think we've all probably Googled something and you've seen Gemini giving you those responses to begin with, but its access to real-time information is great. Its generative capabilities are great. Its reasoning. Some of the issues, though, that it has is some of its performance variability, and also with some of the long-form content responses that it's given. But I want to make sure that everyone knew that this was also another option that's available. And with that, we'll go to our last polling question. How will you look to implement AI in your daily practice as a healthcare professional?
All right. Getting a lot of solid responses. It sounds like there's going to be that increased cross functionality that Christopher was alluding to of, intermixing between PowerPoint and Word and vice versa, but also putting things, into Excel and the formulations and summarizing emails and other documents as well. If you click into a Word document at the top, if it's already been typed up, it'll try summarizing things for you as well. So if you're trying to summarize further meeting minutes, that summary piece is also very useful as well. I know we did get another question, Christopher, asking about the agents and where you would be able to find them. Is that in the initial Copilot suite when you first open it up? I thought it was.
Yep, that's a good question. So when you initially open up Copilot, it'll be to your top right. And once again, it depends on what your access is at your location. but there will be a list of different AI agents that you have available, and you can choose from that suite and add which ones you want to keep as a favorite.
Another comment was brought up about having Copilot try to find a document in Teams and it failed miserably. And that will definitely happen. As Christopher said, it kind of has AI or this machine learning has this false sense of confidence. But I think that's really where we have an opportunity. And it's a little bit more work up front, but giving it that feedback and saying, no, this isn't what I was looking for. And so over time, it also gets to be a better co-pilot for you and works the way you want it to work for you. But there is still that degree of lifting that Christopher alluded to of, you have to be the primary pilot and then it acts in a supportive nature to you. So that's where that kind of extra hands-on human piece of feeding it information comes into play as well. And then I see one last question about it being related to having the professional license of Copilot. I believe, Christopher, you alluded to this as well. It's dependent upon what your enterprise or your health system or site is paying for or providing you access for. I know some health systems have given pilot versions of Copilot and then with successful pilot programs rolled it out across the enterprise, but it could vary depending on the licensing. Christopher, did you want to add anything to that as well?
Yeah, and I think what's important to know for the group is what's possible with the version of Copilot that you're using. So the examples that I gave today is based off the version that I'm utilizing. So as you're potentially making a business case to why you may or may not want to use it, that's something that you might want to talk about at your specific location to see what do you have available and how much it's potentially going to cost, and if that's worth it. Well, thank you everyone for the time. If you have any more questions when it comes to AI, please don't hesitate to reach out. It's always a fun conversation.